domain, actually.
Okay, so, and this is true possibly, and I'll go back to my B2C days as well. It's true there as well. So a lot of times, we often refer to these consumers as fence sitters, that they have this inertia versus buying. So they're happy with their product, or they're looking for the right occasion to buy. And a lot of marketers in the B2C world have actually created that occasion to accelerate that purchase. So in a way, it's similar in the B2B world. A lot of committees, there's a lot of deliberation about what is the best time to do this. Are we ready for it? If we buy a new logistics solution, is our sales geared to handle it? And by integrating many of these buyers or showing them an integrated solution, you're actually accelerating that decision. And that's how you get accelerated revenue.
That's a really interesting concept, because I was recently reading about this concept of customer value and this idea that sometimes the next best alternative to technology is to do nothing at all. Right, is to just leave it alone and not do anything at all. So this idea of actually supporting your sales team, I'm just curious, how are you thinking about metrics, Sanjay, and especially when it comes to accounts and a little bit of what Raghu was talking about as well related to supporting the revenue?
So, with digital, the things have changed a lot, okay? Earlier you had a very clear distinction saying that marketing will get the leads, throw it over the table to the sales guys, they take it up, run, convert, right? Now what we are seeing is everybody is a seller and a marketer. Marketing guys are doing more of selling, and the sellers are doing a lot of marketing, all right? So when you talk about measurement, you cannot have the traditional measures carried forward in the new reality. So now you have a shared understanding of what it takes to drive customer preference and how do you get it done, especially in B2B since it's a long journey, right? And you're working with multiple people.
Yeah.
So when we work with the sales guys, it's actually at the end of the day, we are doing account-based marketing, so we are part of the same team. And that is the first thing we need to ensure, that it is a team which works on an account, whether it involves sales, marketing, procurement, subject matter experts, everybody coming together. And then all of them get enabled to make that conversion happen or drive the buyer preference. So metrics like engagement, which he talked about, Raghu talked about, it's key to it because that helps you drive preference. So those kind of metrics and KPIs are defined, but finally the outcome is the same, the ROI which you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Profitable growth.
So we're talking about growth, we're talking about accelerating revenue, we're talking about long term. Now bringing it back to the study, the marketers that we have here actually belong to a minority, less than 20% of marketers that have truly understood the difference between KPIs and ROIs. And I promise you I did not just pick the ones that have gotten it right, although I'm not surprised. But the question is, the majority of us have not really gotten there, even though we're in the numbers every single day. And I'm sure at some point in my career, I didn't know the difference either. So why do you think a majority of organizations and marketers, despite their best efforts, have not been able to find that or figure out the distinction between KPIs and ROI, even though they are measuring a lot of things? So Neha, do you have a point of view on, or a hypothesis on why you think this is happening?
It's a daily struggle, even for marketers like us who do distinguish between KPIs, and ROI. And the struggle basically comes in, from across the team. So Sanjay kind of talked about stakeholders that we need to work with closely. And these stakeholders have reporting to do pretty much every week or every month. And you're part of that whole reporting process, as their stakeholders on the marketing front. And so kind of giving those numbers, showcasing ROI becomes important. However, if you're able to educate, our stakeholders well in advance and also co-create the ROI and defining it with them, I think that would be really a good journey together without getting the, pressure from the stakeholders. So I think for me, that's kind of worked really well, kind of getting the, the stakeholders involved well in advance, getting them to understand what's the difference between KPI and what is it that we are driving to build more optimization in the short run. However, in the long run, how are we kind of assisting them to build top line growth or cost savings? So.
That's great. Any other advice that you wanted to add as people try to go down this journey as a foundational piece of advice? And we'll switch, since we were talking about stakeholders, we'll switch to that next.
A little bit of advice and this is on the psychological side for marketers. I think we ourselves put ourselves under that pressure of, we've run this campaign. It's been 2 weeks now. We've looked at it 100 times before we launched it. We've looked at it 1,000 times since. The saturation and the level of staleness the campaign has in our own minds is perhaps a lot higher than it is in the market. It takes weeks to get even customers to see it one time, let alone 3. And so our level of saturation as marketers with that campaign our patience runs out a lot faster. So we are under pressure to change it and optimize it and try this new creative, and let's run an A/B test, let's run an ABCD test with 4 different kinds of creatives. So there is that psychological sort of problem that we as marketers have, and we put ourselves under that pressure. The second one is the business rhythms of most organizations, and this is true of startups, this is true of established companies, it's true of Indian companies, multinationals. The business rhythms are very fast and furious. So you have daily reviews, weekly reviews, monthly forecasts, quarterly results. And with marketing at a seat at that table, you are expected to show your contribution on a daily, weekly, fortnightly, and quarterly basis. Whether or not that is giving you a true picture of the ROI or not. And in fact, my request to all marketers would be, I think, a little bit of education both to oneself and to one's stakeholders, the business stakeholders, including leadership, is that take a customer-centric view of the business rhythms. And when we talk about renewals, they could be yearly. When we talk about cross-sell opportunities with customers, that is at their convenience, not ours. Our quarter is closing. That doesn't mean that the customer should come under pressure to buy, because it is not a seller's world; it's a buyer's world. So let's take the customer-centric view of the rhythms, and we'll find a lot of insights about our own business rhythms, which maybe should then snap to the customer rhythms, than have the customers try to have the customer snap to our rhythms.
No, that's great advice. So I think, yeah, please.
No, so the only thing I would like to add to this is, metric is not strategy.
Metric is not strategy.
Right? And there is a purpose for an organization, and there is a role which marketing or everybody plays, and there is a value which you add. Till the time there is an understanding and everybody is on the same page, the fight between short-term and long-term would not happen. So the moment you start confusing metric with strategy, you have a problem. Right? And as Gary put it up, if you look at it, he said, what is the ROI on motherhood, right? you bring up a child. If you start putting metrics to it, and short-term and long-term, you'll have a problem.
Yeah. There was a lot in there. A couple of things that I heard was, one is really being clear that, and a lot of self-awareness that the pressures are there. The short-term pressures are there. And that, of course, nobody's saying that you shouldn't measure KPIs. That there is such a thing. We shouldn't deny ourselves the need to, or the fact that the KPIs are there. Those are metrics. But not to confuse them with strategy, not necessarily actually get the seduction of the short term. And also thinking about your stakeholders, and your most important stakeholder being the customer. So let me throw out to you a couple other interesting things from the study that stood out for me, and you can maybe react to it together. Raghu, you were talking about, the measurements, the reviews are weekly, daily, monthly. And what the study found is 78% of marketers are actually measuring campaigns within the first month of the campaign, right? And that a remarkable only 3%, so less than 5%, are measuring beyond 6 months. And then off the metrics that they are measuring, let's just say they are measuring the right things and they're measuring, most of those metrics are shared amongst marketing teams, and very little is shared outside the marketing organization. In fact, less than 20% share these metrics or ROI with CFOs. So 2 very remarkable things. So I just wanted to get your reaction. How are your sales cycles? How's your stakeholder management? How does this play out for you guys? Does this happen in your organizations? So anyone?
I think increasingly less and less. There is a feeling of us all being on one side, and roles are becoming interchangeable, lines are blurring. There's often a lot that marketing would pick up from a lot of initial work done by sales, as opposed to the traditional model of marketing doing the early work, or as they say, up funnel work, and then sales and others coming in at the down funnel stage. So a lot of that has changed. Everyone is a lot of customers buy online direct. There is no actual intervention there of any sort, and then a lot would like a guided purchasing process, because there's technical involved, there's purchasing involved, there's finance involved. So every deal is different, every sale is different. It boils down to every customer requirement being different. And I think if we keep our eye on the customer and have that customer centricity, we may need to create that variation at our end in terms of process. But that is the advantage of being customer centric versus being process centric. So as long as the customer is centric, and Sanjay talked about account based marketing, as long as we have the account as the center of the universe, then the stakeholders all sort of line up together hand in hand and serve the customer in the best possible way, as opposed to just following a process or a sequence or a baton passing without the customer being the center, which then becomes very confusing for the stakeholders themselves. Hey, I should have got that. Hey, you didn't do that for me soon enough. Or this isn't enough. Can you do more? And then we start measuring each other. But ultimately, the customer is measuring all of us as one entity. Did this solution, meet my needs? And the second thing is, and you mentioned this thing about 1 month, especially in the B2B world, and it's actually no different in the B2C world. We've always had these notions of lifetime value. And it is true for most organizations in the B2B world too. We sell solutions which will then, in our case, actually evolve with our own evolving technologies. They will evolve with the customer's evolving needs. And if you look at the stakeholder, for example, in many of our companies, like products like Teams, for example, you will have collaboration tools where the stakeholder is the employee of that organization. Employees' needs are changing. There are more frontline workers today in India than anywhere else in the world. And frontline means mobile. Mobile means you don't always have the highest quality of network or internet connectivity. So solutions need to be fast, agile, nimble, reliable for that audience. And that means we need to evolve along with the customer, who needs to evolve for the sake of their employees. So there's a lot of change that is up in the air at any point in time. And if we become a little inward looking and start doing this sort of stakeholder management, then who's going to be doing this lifetime customer management?
But that's a real issue, right? I mean, I think this idea that sales and marketing is one team, and that we actually, so this is the debate part that comes in a little bit, because I never really nailed that when I was in it. I think we all conceptually understand that we should all come together around the customers, but at the end of the day, we have to demonstrate our existence in marketing, don't we? I mean, there's the pressure to say everybody should carry a quota. Everybody should have a sales target on their head. Everybody should earn their due. So how do you manage bringing that ethos of customer centricity in a sales and marketing motion where everybody puts that above their own? And I never really figured that out, honestly. It's hard,
I just want to add to what you mentioned, lifetime value. And if you look at who's taking responsibility for ROI on that front, if it kind of becomes a joint responsibility, and not just sales and marketing, it's pretty much all stakeholders coming together, and you have one united front for the customer. I think that's kind of going to really work in the direction of creating real, lifetime value for the customer. So yes, it is a struggle. But like I kind of mentioned earlier, if we can kind of co-create on what we want to achieve together, and I think, lines are blurring, teams are working closer together. Yes, it is a struggle, but I think the intention is there, and that's a good starting point. So.
It's all good to say one in the same team. It is never easy. And there, in my experience and what we have seen in our organization, there are two critical things. One is a person who rams it down your throat. Okay, so there is a key executive sponsor who says this is the right behavior which we expect from the team, all right, and there are roles and responsibilities which are defined there. And the most important part is what, and that's where your metric comes in, right? What are the metrics you are responsible for? The moment there is an agreement on it, whatever people would like to highlight their own achievements or what they are accountable for, whether it's aligned, is not aligned, everything falls in line.
So a lot of leadership required to do this.
That's very good. Leadership is there, and this is what matters, and this is what is important for the organization. Because every organization has a culture code. There's also a code for how you work and perform.
So I think one important thing, and I'm kind of moving a little bit on the topic on skill and the hiring process. Today when as marketing leaders we are hiring, I think one important aspect we're looking at is collaboration, stakeholder management, and that becomes extremely imperative to drive the ROI ultimately. And so from our end, at least on HCL, from HCL Tech, that's a big focus on the new skills we are looking at when we are hiring for marketing.
So let me put you guys in the hot seat. We talked about leadership. We talked about bringing the team together. You are the CEO of your organizations, and the sales and marketing team has come together, and you're going to give them one thing that they need to start, one thing they need to stop, and one thing they need to continue. What would you tell them?
Let me go first. I think, and this is very, somehow it's easier when you're starting up your own business, and a lot of startups get this right. Without adding the complexity that larger organizations sometimes get trapped in, and that is the beauty of interchangeable roles. So if one co-founder is unwell and the other one needs to go and make a pitch, they do it very seamlessly, and at times in an organization, maybe out of respect, maybe out of a sense of formality, we do check: is this really my job? Is this in my role description? And that often limits the organization's capability in totality. So I think one is we're all employees of the same organization. We should jump in to help each other and even take each other's place if someone can't be somewhere. So do it together. The second is a common dashboard. A great team, and this is about teamship as much as leadership. Maybe much more about teamship than leadership. And this collaboration that Sanjay and Neha talked about, collaboration is the key. And collaboration is so much more easy when it's powered by the same set of tools. So common tools, common dashboard. When you have a common view of the problem, chances are the initial dispute that goes into defining the problem from my perspective, your perspective, finance perspective, marketing perspective, that goes away, and you get that customer perspective view of the problem. Let's solve it, and by the same metrics. And the last one is this is the hardest to do. We often say that you should think of the customer. We almost never think like the customer. What are the customer's metrics? If it's an airline, are they worried about costs? Are they worried about on-time arrival? Are they worried about capacity? Are they worried about collaboration with other airline providers? Make their problems yours, and you will get a far longer set of metrics, which you may be calling your own so-called business metrics, but they're actually the customer's metrics. So think like the customer.
That's something you brought up earlier as well, which is we're always thinking about our end of the quarter, what we need to make our numbers, but they have their end of the quarter and their own needs and pressures. That's great advice. Let me ask one sub-question that has come in from the live comments that's related to a point that you made, which is, according to you, what automation tool or marketing technology is the most useful in the context of tools and single dashboards? Have you really leveraged technology for that?
So I'll answer that. It's a great question. And again, let me remind the person who was asked the question that there is no silver bullet as far as tools are concerned. Tools are enablers. It's like the calculator in your hand. It's like the stuff you wear on your wrist that tells you something. So it's an enabler. It's not going to be telling you what to do and how to do it. So it's just that speedometer on your dashboard. One tool, however, that does come to my mind is Power BI. Because it's giving you real time, it's like a dashboard, it's giving you real time view of everything at a leadership level. In fact, everyone from the leader to the front line sees the same dashboard. So you don't spend any time generating reports, and you don't spend any time comparing your version of truth versus my version of truth. So because it's giving you one version of truth at all times. Power BI is a great tool. It's not necessarily a marketing tool though. It's just a wonderful dashboard for the business. The tool, I think it's as marketers we all use a variety of tools. We have CRM tools. We have creative tools. I would say take a view of any tool that captures all 4 P's of the business. So there's pricing, there's product, there's promotion, there's place. Don't have, don't overinvest in agencies or coach your agencies not to keep reporting only on the promotion part of the business. Expand your tooling, expand your perspective to the other P's as well, because it's related. So when you run a price promotion and you promote it, which has an implication on certain products in a certain geography, look at that in totality. Don't just look at the ad.
Just to add, because this is a favorite topic of mine, automation. The person who asked the question, you should think beyond tools. It's not about tools at all, as he pointed. What you should be looking at is what will help you achieve what you want to achieve. The information, the data, wherever it comes from. So your data model which you're talking about, or what you want to share with your stakeholder, what is the best way of doing it, that's what you should be focusing on. You will never get one tool which will solve your problem, right? And everybody has this problem of shiny object, right? The latest one comes in, I want to buy it. I want to buy it. Yeah. This will solve my problem. It never does. Tool makers end up making the money.
Yeah.
You lose night's sleep. That's what happens.
Great. So while we're on you, Sanjay, let's have you ask the question. You're the CEO of ROI Inc. One thing that you would ask your team to start, stop, and continue. And with that, let me add a bonus question from one of our viewers, which is, what is the role of the entrepreneur versus in marketing? So I thought I'd mix that in there, because I think Raghu brought up the point that you think about it differently if this was your own company and you were starting from scratch.
No, so what problem to solve is what people should start thinking. I think that's the core to it. If you start doing that, automatically stop and continue will fall in place, because it will tell you what to stop and what to start doing, everything, right? So I think that's at core of it. In terms of entrepreneurs, it's people underestimate it. I have done stints at startups as well. Risk-taking, placing bets on things which you believe in, that is very important to success, right? And if you don't have people in your team and a leader who actually encourages it, you're not going to succeed in delivering value anywhere, right? So that's why entrepreneurship is very, very crucial as a trait.
To support marketing, intelligent risk-taking, yeah?
Everywhere, yeah.
Great, thanks. So Neha, ROI Inc., you have just been announced. So what are you this is your day of getting the team together on the same page. What would you ask them to stop, start, continue? And a bonus question for you is really all about what are the new forms of digital marketing in terms of starting, can organizations can start looking at? So what's new in this space?
So I think just the first part of the question, so continue on that front, I would say really the entrepreneurial agility, kind of moving really fast, taking certain risks, calculated risks, but kind of making decision-making fast and kind of moving with it. I think that works really well currently for the team, and luckily for us, the environment we get, at HCL is very entrepreneurial. So really having that flexibility and the agility and making quick decisions, I think that's something that we want to continue. What we would, want to do more, and we already do that well, but I think we can do a lot more, and all marketeers can, is really communication, really. How quick and how often are we communicating to our stakeholders, to our teams, on what we are doing? We've talked about metrics, but how do we share that in time, get stakeholder buy-in, and then kind of move forward? I think that would be something, that would be a continued focus. I think in terms of, stopping would be, like both Sanjay and Raghu kind of talked about, not just looking at, new tools in the market, but really also looking at how we're going to change mindset within to leverage those tools. I think that's equally important. So not just looking at automation and we bought this tool, but what are we going to do to really show ROI on the automation or on the tool that we bought? So I think those would be the three pieces.
That's great. So I think you guys have, I'm sure a number of people on the live stream are waiting for you guys to start recruiting for ROI Inc. It sounds like a great place to work. So let me pick up on the last point that you brought up, Neha, about communication. I had brought up the stat earlier, the remarkable stat that just like the irony of Live with Marketers is that I'm talking to a bunch of marketers, we do like talking to each other, don't we? In fact, I'm really enjoying this because you understand me, I understand you, we're speaking the same language, and regional to global, but marketers kind of hang out with marketers. Now, I know we're the coolest people ever. The big question is, like, why do we not, are we afraid, or do we, like, what is keeping us, and why do less than 30% of us regularly interact with finance, procurement, sales? Like, what is, what's going on over there?
I mean, I like to start with that. I think one of the things is we're not educating our other stakeholders enough. So like you said, there is comfort when you talk about data and metrics to your own peer set, because they understand, and maybe not as much, but they understand better than the rest of the stakeholders. So it's just more comforting to kind of tell them and talk to them about the data. However, with the larger stakeholders, you know, there is a prelude of educating them and telling them what these metrics stand for in the long run of the business. And then again, going back to your point of KPIs versus ROI. So in a lot of cases, ROI is well understood possibly, but the KPIs that we are working on regularly and which we are kind of watching closely and optimizing, that language is only well understood by marketing. So how do we simplify it further to really show benefit to other stakeholders? I think if you're able to do that, then the communication automatically will happen more frequently, you know, and easily. So that would be my
that's
take.
interesting. So simplifying, communicating, but the big question is, should we be communicating those at all? I mean, I sometimes wonder, does it even matter to them? And is it worth the effort, the prep for the meetings to try and explain what we do? And I never know, you know, I feel like I want to share what we're doing and the impressive metrics and the thing that gets, but I don't see the spark in the non-marketing functions about some of these things that I see in your eyes when we speak about, you know, engagement rates.
I think Peter Drucker said this. Marketing is the view of the business from the consumer's end or the customer's lens. So if we are best equipped to tell that story, then we should be talking the stakeholders' language as well. And one of the things that, by the way, marketers are paid to do or take on themselves to do is to talk the language of the customer. And that's how segmentation got invented. They said, oh, there's no one customer, there are many segments, and this segment talks this language, this segment likes this kind of thing. And, you know, so we segmented the market, and today we're in an era of hyper-personalization, which is true. I mean, that's the fundamental truth. None of us are similar. All of us have our different likes, dislikes, moods. In fact, we're not even, as an individual, the same on the same day. You know, different mood in the morning, different mood in the evening. So hyper-personalization at different times of day. So we can easily get into an overkill on this customization for our stakeholders. If we spare the time, we definitely have the capability.
So there's a great question that's related to that. Maybe Sanjay, you can take this from one of the viewers. Do B2B services marketers need a Northstar metric, especially for the long term, to simplify the conversation? Is there one number or one metric?
Every organization has a purpose, right? And profitable growth, let us assume if that was the main thing which underlies everything, then that is the North Star. There cannot be a metric or an ROI goal which is different from what organization has. So it's as simple. You're not inventing something, right? That engagement rate is my North Star.
It's whatever's aligned with the purpose of that organization becomes the North Star.
To achieve that purpose, the organization has certain things which it does, right? The mission and vision and everything. And then defines what you do, how you do it, how you behave. So your marketing, ROI, value, everything is aligned with it. That North Star will come from there, not from a person like me, Raghu, or Neha talking about it, right?
Yeah, that's
so that
great.
is something which has to come in. And to add to what Neha was talking about, what we marketers need to do more is, we talk about, educating our stakeholders, making them aware. The way I have seen it is, it works the other way around. You spend time with them to learn what they do, right? You understand the business, how they run it. You spend time with the sales guy when he's on the field. You develop that language automatically. Then it doesn't become an extra added effort to you go ahead and, educate them, because you yourself are educated about it.
So that's a really interesting nuance. And one of the viewers had this question. Actually, few people have asked this question around what are the top 3 KPIs we should measure. But I think what I'm hearing from you is it's not about what top 3. There's no single list of 3. It's Sounds like as you go do discovery.
It's a journey, right? It changes. There are priorities for a business which change. Sometimes during the slowdowns, you have a different kind of priority. You're holding back to the market share somehow. You're trying to do it. In aggressive times, you're trying to grow the market share, right? But the actual ROI as a business doesn't change. The priorities change in the short term. The long-term goals remain the same. So yes, there will be a North Star, but the priorities for a certain cycle would change. And that's where the metric is defined differently. The ROI doesn't get defined differently.
So,
I can add
yeah,
one.
please.
I can add one. And this is by no means a metric, but it's often left unsaid, and that is trust. Technology obviously has to be trusted. If you're in the pharmaceutical business, your product has to be trusted. Or if you're selling toothpaste, you've got to be trusted. If you're selling tea, coffee, you've got to be trusted. So whether it's something you eat, consume, use, code with, or live in, or drive, it's got to be trusted. And trust is an outcome. It's not really a metric that you can say, okay, I'm going to be more trusted this month. What do I need to do about it? It's not something you go about consciously doing, but it's that sort of purpose. It's that mission that we all strive for. And you referred to it and said, what are the metrics of, say, being a good mother or a good father or a good friend? And all of us want to be good friends. We want to be trusted. We want to be reliable. We want to be good citizens of this country, this world. And you can't put a metric to any of those in the daily, weekly, even at a lifetime level. So I think anything that, to the question that was asked, the true north, I don't believe that can ever be a number. When Microsoft was founded, Bill Gates' mission was to put a computer on every desk. Because in those days, computers were bigger than rooms and needed punch cards to program. And that's how Windows became a very easy interface to program instead of those punch cards. And when that got achieved, the company evolved its mission to saying we'll empower every business and every person on this planet to achieve more. Now that is not a number. Achieve how much more? What percentage more? That's not the point.
The purpose and the vision which
It is the vision that drives you, and if that purpose is bigger than us, then it'll drive us for a long time. If that purpose is a number, it'll drive us for a very short time.
I think for me, the North Star for any organization is really the big business objective in the short run that you're driving and the purpose in the long run that you're driving. I think those
It's a very
two.
powerful notion, which is if we lift our heads up and get out of the KPI ROI conversation, which is where we started this. And where we started this was, what are people measuring? When are they measuring? Who are they sharing it with? What I really took away from this, which is really actually inspiring, which is maybe none of this is the right question. Maybe the right question is, are we taking the time to, not just think about the customer, but think like the customer? Are we not focused on potentially one metric, but what is the purpose of the organization? And maybe there will be new metrics that come down from that because that pervades everything. Or, for example, this idea of sales metrics, marketing metrics, maybe that's an irrelevant conversation because ultimately if we align around purpose and customer, getting everyone sort of focused on the right thing may make this debate obsolete. So this is I learned something new. I love the job that I do because every day I get to really reframe my own thinking about what we do. I hope that's what opportunity you had as well as viewers with us. I really enjoyed this. I want to thank you all, Raghu, Neha, Sanjay, for being here, right here live with marketers. This was an amazing conversation, and I want to thank all of our viewers on our behalf for taking the time to ask amazing questions and really help us understand this topic. And have a great rest of the afternoon. If you're on the on-demand, thank you for staying with us throughout the whole time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great summary.